Mr. Tim Kennedy delivers a scathing critique of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, calling out systemic failures in immigration enforcement, disaster response, and Homeland Security funding. His questioning highlights how leadership decisions directly impact public safety, communities, and the most vulnerable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Noem, with about a year as DHS Secretary under your belt, there's no shortage of criticisms for me to choose from today. You've deported American citizens, bringing a level of inhumanity to this nation's immigration laws that I haven't seen in my lifetime. You've terrorized communities, including my own in Buffalo, New York, vowing to go after the worst of the worst, but instead detaining women, children, and hardworking individuals in pursuit of the American dream. You've botched a response to one of the most devastating floods we've seen, an extreme weather event along the Guadalupe River that took more than 130 innocent lives, including more than 35 children. Central Texas waited days for your agency to respond because of the reckless policies you've implemented. Your FEMA lead was missing in action, completely unreachable, as were FEMA's call lines, with 84% of calls unanswered on July 7th, 3 days after the floods. FEMA personnel, despite your slashing of their ranks, who were ready and willing to help, waited days to spring into action because of your policies. Disasters do not wait for bureaucracy. Your abysmal performance goes beyond your woeful disaster response. You've also taken a sledgehammer to FEMA's recovery, preparedness, and mitigation missions. You canceled more than $4 billion in building resilient infrastructure in communities funds, a program that helps communities reduce their risk of natural disasters. You withheld millions in FEMA funds for emergency alerting infrastructure found to be in violation of the Impound Control Act. You, perhaps most critical to my state of New York, canceled more than 90% of New York State's Homeland Security program funding, including $134 million in urban area security initiative funds for New York City's greater metropolitan areas. You have mismanaged these grants to the point where cities and states, including New York, are suing you to recover counterterrorism funding that's lawfully theirs and that Congress intended for them to receive. It's a tragedy that we're here today discussing these cuts to counterterrorism and security grant funds for a city that was the main site of the September 11th attacks, the entire reason your department was established in the first place. As the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Emergency Management, it's my responsibility to show the American public how you've systemically upended FEMA and emergency preparedness as we know it. So I have a couple of questions. Simple yes or no answer will suffice. Would you agree with the national security officials' assessment that the United States has been operating in a heightened threat environment for several years now?
Yes.
Yes or no? Would you say New York City is susceptible to these kinds of security threats?
Yes, and that's why they should spend.
So with New York City
$440
being the
million
number
they
one
had in
terrorist
reserves,
target in the
the
nation,
federal government gave them
with
to
New
use
York
to
City
secure
being
their
the number
city,
one, I
which
reclaim
they
my
did
time,
not
with New York
spend.
City being the
They
number
did not
one
spend the
security
hundreds of
threat in
millions
this
of dollars
nation,
they had
it's
to secure their
unconscionable
city.
that you
And
would cut
release criminals on the street each and every day.
$134 million in urban area security initiative funding for the city of New York. What compels you to knowingly make our cities less safe with these funding cuts?
What compels you, your mayor, and your governor to release thousands of criminals on the streets rather than to turn them over to ICE? You'd rather release
Secretary Noem,
a murderer out on
Secretary
your
Noem,
street,
you cut
a rapist on your street,
$134 million
and honor our detainers.
in
You should
funds
honor our
to
detainers
support the
against violent
security
criminals
of
to get
New
them out
York
of New York
City
City.
and the state of New York, the number one threat in this nation. In your own words, your cuts are blatantly political, callous, and outright dangerous. It's clear you have no interest in countering real threats in the homeland. While high-risk cities and disaster zones wait for help, you've devoted the past 11 months of violent raids, anti-police policies, and nonstop photo ops. You've brought shame to a department that was created after 9/11 in a time of unity to protect our people. Your failure to lead is a direct threat to the homeland security in our nation, and you should resign immediately. I yield back.
In this exchange, Representative Tim Kennedy delivers a searing critique of Secretary Kristi Noem's first year at the Department of Homeland Security, highlighting what he describes as systemic failures in immigration enforcement, disaster response, and Homeland Security funding. Kennedy opens by challenging Noem's immigration policies, pointing to the deportation of American citizens and the targeting of communities, including his own in Buffalo, New York, rather than focusing on the worst of the worst. By framing these actions as both legally and morally indefensible, he underscores the human cost of administrative overreach. Women, children, and hardworking residents allegedly subjected to aggressive enforcement in pursuit of a politically framed mandate. The senator then shifts to disaster management, centering on the Guadalupe River floods that claimed over 130 lives, including more than 35 children. Kennedy criticizes FEMA's slow and inadequate response, highlighting unanswered calls, missing leadership, and delayed deployment of personnel. He attributes this failure directly to Noem's policies, including staffing reductions and bureaucratic mismanagement, emphasizing that disasters do not wait for red tape. The legal and ethical implications are clear. Federal agencies are entrusted with life-saving responsibilities, and delays in response due to administrative choices can constitute a serious breach of duty to the public. Kennedy's critique further extends to counterterrorism and Homeland Security funding. He points out that Noem cut more than 90% of New York State's Homeland Security program funds, including $134 million earmarked for the Urban Area Security Initiative, which directly impacts the city considered the top terrorist target in the U.S. These cuts, he argues, undermine national security, contravene congressional intent, and provoke legal challenges from states and municipalities seeking to reclaim funds lawfully allocated to them. This highlights the tension between executive discretion in budget implementation and the legal requirement to honor congressional appropriations, especially when public safety is at stake. Kennedy's remarks also underscore the human dimension of policy failures, reminding the public that administrative decisions are never abstract. They directly affect everyday lives. By detailing the impacts on communities, families, and first responders, he emphasizes that leadership at DHS is measured not only by legal compliance or budget execution, but by its ability to safeguard the most vulnerable. The combination of mismanaged disaster relief, cut security funding, and aggressive immigration enforcement paints a picture of an agency under leadership that, in his assessment, prioritizes politics over people, creating a ripple effect of fear, insecurity, and mistrust across the nation. Throughout the exchange, Kennedy frames Noem's leadership as not only inefficient, but politically motivated and ethically questionable. He emphasizes that while high-risk cities and disaster zones waited for aid, the secretary prioritized raids, photo ops, and policy agendas perceived as anti-police or politically expedient. By calling these decisions blatantly political, callous, and outright dangerous, Kennedy asserts that they constitute a direct threat to public safety and homeland security, framing the argument as a question of both legal accountability and moral responsibility. Finally, the exchange illustrates the vital role of congressional oversight in a democracy. By pressing Noem with direct questions, citing specific failures, and referencing legal obligations, Kennedy demonstrates how elected officials are tasked with ensuring that executive actions align with both statutory mandates and the protection of citizens. His call for resignation underscores the seriousness of perceived misconduct. Leadership failures at DHS, he argues, are not abstract missteps. They carry tangible consequences for lives, communities, and the nation's security infrastructure.